Currently, if you're a pensioner and you earn less than £35,000 a year, you are eligible for the winter fuel payment. But as the triple lock remains in place and pensions are set to rise with inflation, more than 500,000 pensioners are expected to be pushed above that threshold over the next 4 years. And that means they won't receive the payment, which, as you know, I'm sure by now, is worth up to £300 a year. In the next year alone, more than 100,000 pensioners could find themselves ineligible for it. So do you feel as if the threshold ought to rise with inflation? Should that payment be protected? Gosh, this is a complicated one. Why don't we go to Marvyn first on this?
Yeah, I think the value of £35,000, I think that's often what the concern is that the value of something when the policy is set will change and erode. And as much as you can try to minimise it with things by measuring against inflation, the real world cost of things are beyond what inflation is measured by. So it is important that we make sure these 100,000 pensioners aren't living in cold and freezing conditions and are not looked after. And we have to make adjustment to policies to match the real world concerns that are arisen when they're put into place. I think that this is something that Labour cannot miss again. We went through this whole of last summer. Their first 100 days was marred with this particular policy. Let's try to get it right. Let's try to get it right very quickly and so move on to other things that we need to do. But you have to look after the pensioners in this country. So
and
non-negotiable.
Yes, Elizabeth, the triple lock, some people think it's cripplingly expensive for the government. There are lots of young people who feel as if they're struggling desperately and pensioners are all nicely set up and being looked after better than they're being looked after. They go nowhere near the property ladder. They can't even dream of it. Their lives are kind of almost on hold. They're not having kids because they can't get a place. They really feel as if they're absolutely at the sharp end of all of this. So I wonder whether we think that we do need to do this or we don't need to do this.
I have to say I'm with Marvyn, and I think he's expressed it better than I possibly could as someone who isn't a mathematician, so I don't really know what I'm speaking about. What I do know is that pensioners in this country often get overlooked. I think the way we treat our elderly people is absolutely, it's so disturbing and upsetting. These are people who have built the foundation of our country, who have often fought to protect our country, and we forget that at our peril. So I'm with Marvyn, I think we should protect it. And ultimately, can't we just tax the top 1% and double the salaries of doctors and nurses?
If it were that easy, if they made you Chancellor, you'd do that the first day and we'd all start living happily ever after. Lizzie?
I think this government would be foolish to hurt the pensioners. Look what happened when they were going to withdraw the winter fuel allowance. Everyone turned against them. I think they thought they don't normally get the older vote, the Labour Party, so that's why they did it. But it would be a disaster. We've got this budget that's coming this autumn. We're all sitting on the edge of our seats, which is going to tax the air that we breathe. But we really have to look after our pensioners. And they're worrying. My mum's friends are worrying, thinking, what are they going to do to us next? They always seem to be hurting them. They need to be looked after. And they say they don't hurt the working people or the pensioners. They are working people. They've worked all their lives and they need to be cared for.
I mean, I sat there taking calls on this, on the radio primarily through the whole thing. Yeah. And my gosh, the callers, these are people in general who are incredibly dignified, and the last thing they want to do is be beholden to anyone. They don't want to be asking for things. They don't want to be having to sort of demand money. They just want to be able to put on the heating without worrying about it. And lots of people I spoke to wouldn't dream of getting into debt. I mean, that would be their idea of absolute living hell. So what they were already doing was kind of preemptively turning off the heating in anticipation of being worried about not being able to afford to put it on. And, people were ringing about their own parents and saying, I'm so worried about my mother. I keep saying to her, Mum, please put the heating on. And she says, no, I don't want to because I'm scared of getting into debt, which I've never done and I don't want to do. This is a very dignified generation who really are not comfortable with any of this. And I think also uncomfortable with the discation about it that seems to go on and on. It's just very unsettling, isn't it?
And they worry. Older people worry. And, it really frightens me how this government are treating the older generation. We should be thanking them and helping them, not doing this.
The other thing, of course, is that this brings a burden. If you suddenly find yourself above this £35,000 threshold, then you're in a position where you have to file all this paperwork. You have to file the kind of tax situation, which you've got to be familiar with and understand. You can tell by the way I said tax situation, I don't really understand it myself because it is complicated. It costs money to do it. It all gets very convoluted, very sort of difficult, intricate. Lots of people of a certain generation aren't even online and they couldn't even fill in the online forms. It just makes life kind of worrying at a time when you would hope, Marvyn, that you were enjoying the fruits of a long life and having a nice time, theoretically.
It's really difficult because I think this government's managed to make everybody feels slightly unsafe and unstable. And that's probably the harder thing to do. And it's about really committing to the original left ideas of like, we look after the elderly, we want to create a future for young people. Those things come hand in hand, and everybody else should work for what it is that they're doing. And I think, you know, and also this generation of elderly people are just so different. Like, this is the first generation. Some of them are around when the internet came out, so they were young and working. And I think they need to be able to be developed and supported when they've committed a lot of money into public coffers.
Yeah,
and
let's go to Grace in Devon. Hi, Grace. What do you feel about this one?
I'm coming up for 80, and I'm on 15 grand a year. You know, from pension.
Yes.
And I cut my cloth to manage with my money. I mean, I worked in accounts all my life, so you cope. I've got a.
We need you to turn off your telly, really, Grace, because I think I can hear it in the background. I can hear you, and then I can hear yourself a bit later. That's why we always say, can you turn off or turn it down so that you can focus?
I turned it off.
Good. Grace, so you're saying that you can manage on your 15,000 a year. You carefully.
Because that's right. You're careful. You don't waste money on things that you can't afford. I mean, okay, I did a life. I worked in finance all my life, so you learn to manage. But, you know, when you see what some people do, they just waste money, drinking and smoking and everything, and it's just stupid.
Talk to me a little bit about life on £15,000, because, you know, it's significantly below the average amount of money that people earn in this country. Some people will imagine that your life is narrow and small and worrying and limited. Is it?
I would say no, but I don't. You know, you don't spend money on stuff you haven't got. You don't need.
But tell me about, you know, things that you do that you enjoy doing, or the quality of your life, the things that give you pleasure, Grace.
Well, I suppose for me, I fell over about 2-3 years ago, and I damaged my back. So getting about isn't an issue. But I have always been happy in my own house, my own space. So I don't need to. I used to go out, but, you know, I used to bowl, but once I did my back in, I can't do that anymore. But I don't, you just accept it.
You know, it's lovely talking to you, Grace. It's an absolute pleasure. There's Grace, you know, leading a life, fairly independent person, having a you know, a dignified and excellent life on £15,000 a year.
You're an example to us all, Grace.
Certainly is.
Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, for that call. Let's go to Mark in West Yorkshire. Mark, how do you feel about this? So it's going to be pensioners who suddenly find themselves outside the limit and then not qualified.
Sorry, Vanessa. I think it's utterly disgusting.
You don't have to apologise to me.
For us, and we can't look after them in recieve. Can't speak. I'm so angry. In their declining years.
Yeah, and so
it's very unfair.
do you think, Mark, that the Prime Minister needs to make some kind of statement about this to kind of say, look, don't worry, because we will scoop you up. There'll be some kind of flexible sliding scale here. We'll scoop up the people who come closest but not quite there, so they don't get left out?
I think that it should do more than say what he's going to do. He should do it.
He shouldn't just say it, he should do it. Yeah, well, that makes sense. Mark, thank you so much.